During the month of May, I was very busy with IDF wellness research. As most of you know, I really only work on close family and friends and things like that these days as I'm gathering some research. But I had a very dear friend of mine reach out and say that her sister really needed some help and was experiencing symptoms that were very congruent with schizophrenia. And any of you who've watched our Alchemiculture podcast episodes with Jerry Marzinski and Sherry Sweeney, you'll know that we talked a lot about the conventional approach to schizophrenia just being possibly incomplete. And now I actually have some data on that by being able to work with this individual. So the basis of the Sherry Sweeney and Jerry Marzinski episodes boiled down to essentially that schizophrenia is a condition that is largely created by or coincides with demonic activity or interdimensional entities inside of that person's space. And what we found with this particular individual that I worked on was that that was absolutely true. Demonic possession was as high as it could possibly be. There were also some ancestral entities and other forms of interdimensional entities inside of the space, and even a little bit of possession by both of those. But for the first time, I actually have data showing that there are interdimensional implants in the etheric body of an individual's brain, and the area of the brain in the etheric space of the brain. So it's not necessarily the physical part, but the area where the physical fornix is, the etheric area of that is where these implants were actually put in, and they allow voices to be registered. Now, what's interesting is that the fornix actually deals with part of the brain that deals with vocal memory. And so we found that to be very interesting. Also, along with this, we also found that the auditory nerves, that there was auditory neuritis, that there were a couple of other things that deal with the auditory centers of the brain and the fornix in particular. And there's a lot of medical research out there showing that people with schizophrenia oftentimes do have some sort of abnormality in the formation of the fornix, particularly in the glutamatergic receptors or the GABAergic receptors and fibers inside of the fornix, where there's too much glutamate as a active neurotransmitter, excitatory neurotransmitter is what that's called, and not enough GABA, which is a down-regulating neurotransmitter. And so there's all of this activity in the fornix, and it's oftentimes conceived by, standard allopathic medicine, medical research, that this too much glutamate creating excitatory response inside of the brain is getting processed somehow as a vocal memory that you're hearing voices talk to you. But what we have actually seen over here is that that is definitely true, but that there is an interdimensional implant. And furthermore, I ended up contacting our very dear friend Michelle DeVries, who turned me on to Sherry Sweeney's work and Jerry Marzinski's work in the first place. And maybe you've seen her on a couple of episodes of the Alchemiculture podcast as well. But we talked about it, and we did another custom IDF investigation. We found that demons actually seek out people with these very particular C4 anomalies. C4A, C4B is a particular SNP or a gene that gets encoded in a couple of different ways, and certain mutations and or polymorphisms make a person susceptible to having these problems in the fornix, and demons and other interdimensional entities are scanning genes and genetic material and being able to predate upon individuals with these particular genetic mutations or polymorphisms that create the predisposition to those diseases in the first place. And that's the kind of mechanism that draws them to certain people as opposed to others. So there are physiological components. There are definitely some very energetic, or what we could refer to as spiritual components to it, based on the research that we have right now. Now, this is singular points of data, meaning that we are only running on one individual right now and then some investigations. Over time, we'll be able to understand more by fleshing this out and possibly even running a complete study group on people who have been diagnosed with schizophrenia to see if this is true all the way across the board. We've been running some experimental broadcasts to see what types of beneficial effects that we can make. But so far, the work is still ongoing, so I don't have any conclusive data for you yet. But I thought that that was very, very interesting and very much so worth mentioning.